I'm repping for my team. I got that talent on my team. Micah High, Jordan Poyer, can you catch it? Can you? Trade day is like a mask, you not catching anything. Matt Milano making plays, we not scared of any team. Best in the AFC, all the praise of Brandon Bean. You hear Sean McDermott clapping while I'm snapping? Do you? Jerry Hughes will get the sack soon as you snap it. Yeah. Andre Roberts running back, ain't no just backing. Mafia, we on a ride and we got traction.
Mafia, what is up? And welcome into the Process, part of the Bills Brawl on the Brawl Network. I am your host, one of your hosts, Charlie Gross. You can find me on Twitter at Charlie_Gross_, and riding with my co-host, EJ Daniels. EJ, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. Always a pleasure to talk to the Bills Mafia. You can find me on Twitter at eDaniel77. I am here for all the hot takes. I want to hear your takes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And so, quick programming note. I'm starting a Friday show called the Podcaster's Corner. It's going to be a little bit of Bills talk, a little bit of talking about podcasting and how people got into it, and if they have any tips for anyone out there who wants to jump in on the podcasting thing. So look for that either on Fridays or Saturdays, probably Fridays. I got Judge Mathis coming up on the first one. But, EJ, you and I have got some articles to talk about. Let's see here. We got one about the Jerry Hughes, which we'll get to later. And we've got one from Pro Football Focus. I guess they kind of lay out a plan, possible plan of the what the Bills should do in free agency and the draft.
Yeah, this was released by my guy Ben Brown, one of the PFF writers. He's a really good dude. But yeah, like you said, it's essentially just laying out, the plan that the Bills should go in the draft and in free agency. And as I said to you, currently the Bills stand over the cap right at this moment in time. They're over the cap. The number is minus $1.8 million. So that's where the Bills are starting at. Obviously, free agency starts next week, so the Bills will be, making moves to get under the cap. But that's where they stand at this time. And I think this article did a really good job of just laying everything out. They did it position by position. I'll start with what struck me. If you look right at the first Buffalo Bills projected 2021 offense, I'll start there.
Right.
They have Zach Moss penciled in as a starter, and we know Zach Moss had a pretty solid rookie year, I would say, as an overview, even though his season was cut short in the Colts game, but he ranked 30th out of 70 running backs this year, qualified running backs this year. I'd say that's not too bad. He had over a 72 PFF grade, if I'm not mistaken. That's what's in here. Right now, 72.6 PFF rookie grade, and I think that's awesome. And I think he did enough, honestly, to earn the starting running back role in this Bills offense.
Yeah, that was a guy who came in, and I think a lot was made of his quote, certainly of, he's gonna, make people make business decisions, tackling him, and in a way, I think he sort of put expectations on himself that unfortunately he couldn't really live up to in that sense of the word. Certainly he was a rookie. He had some injuries, and I'm kind of torn between Singletary and Moss. I think they certainly have similarities. They have differences. I think the one big difference that I've noticed is that Moss seems to be a bit better in blitz pickup and maybe a little more sure-handed in the passing game.
Mm-hmm. No question about it. He had the highest PFF pass blocking grade of any running back this year, rookie running back. So you're spot on with that. And then absolutely is definitely a way better catcher. Motor drops too many easy ones, and that's his biggest thing. He played really well at the beginning of the season, but, towards the end of the season, you notice that he dropped a lot of easy ones. Motor has a lot of mental lapses, and he's a second-year guy. It's not like he's 5-6 years in. He's a second-year guy, so you got to kind of expect that. But he has a lot of mental lapses, and look no further than that last game against the Chiefs. He dropped that one easy pass, and they yanked him for the rest of the game. I did not see him after he dropped that pass. So Motor in that regard, we know Zach Moss had a fumble, a really nasty, ugly fumble in the end zone. But other than that, can you really name like a bad play off the top of your head where you're like, man, Zach really messed up? I can't think of any off the top of my head right now.
No, not really. And to be quite honest, he made, I feel like, less mistakes than Gabe Davis. I mean, I like Gabe Davis, but I mean, Gabe Davis dropped 4 touchdown passes at least. Mm-hmm. And I know he led the team in receiving. I don't want to get off track with the running backs, but yeah, to your point, I mean, Zach Moss didn't really make a lot of mistakes. I think there were, if you're really going to go study the film, which I have not yet. I've been a bad Buffalo Bills media person, but I think there's probably some times where he could have chosen a different hole, or maybe just the blocking wasn't up to speed, which isn't his fault. Like he runs, he doesn't block. So I don't think it's obviously perfection, but sure. And that Singletary drop, I mean, that affected the Bills in that game probably more than it should have. But when we talked about the other day, we talked about Josh taking checkdowns. Well, that was a checkdown, and Singletary dropped it. Yeah. So I can understand how Josh is like, well, I don't know what to do now because these guys are covered. You're dropping passes. So yeah, I hadn't thought about Moss as the starter, but I do think it makes some sense.
Yeah, and another thing to your point is that Moss being the starter is also cheaper. And I know Bills Mafia has been on this train as a collective of talking about they need to take a running back with the 30th overall pick, and I am definitely not on that train with them. I think Moss and Singletary both have done enough to garner them, being the backs of the future. And it's not like the Bills don't have other options at running back currently on this roster with, Antonio Williams, DJ Yeldon, even Christian Wade. They have other backs that I think deserve a look. We know statistically, and as analytical guys that I work, because everyone knows I work for PFF, we say, or we have shown and seen that running back success is dictated by your O-line. So if the Bills want to improve the running game, they need to improve the interior of their O-line. I released something yesterday, actually, talking about the Bills were the 13th or 17th best run blocking team or something like that. And I was trying to tell people, and I've been saying this for a while, that I had the pleasure of watching them for the first couple of weeks of the season before the bye. And the running blocking really wasn't as bad as Bills Mafia is making it out to be. Where I will agree with Bills Mafia is that the run blocking tapered off towards the end, and it got kind of atrocious, in that last game. And so that's what you guys were seeing. So it's kind of like a recency bias type thing, but it wasn't bad for the totality of the season. And you saw a little bit of that, rear its ugly head in that last game against Kansas City.
Right. And I think sounded to you, once you got into that sort of Brian Winters, that rotation, like Butker was coming in, but he was certainly struggling. I mean, I think he played better a little bit as the season went on, and that sort of Feliciano injury, and then the Winters thing, I think that really kind of stuck with people too, and so you're sort of isolating that like moment when you were just like, man, they were bad, yeah. Right, and then right towards like the last game, things didn't go well. So yeah, I mean, I think the Mafia is pretty on board with needing a guard. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Some people want 2 guards, which I don't think is going to happen. Let me ask you this. I think it's fine. Or I would be fine with it if they took a guard at 30. Mm-hmm. What are your feelings about that?
Absolutely not. Please don't take a guard at 30. Here's why. Actually, I literally just discussed this though. So this is my rationale. You can win in the league, as you can see with the Bills. You can win in the league with average to maybe less than average, we'll say, guard play. It will come back to bite you. Obviously, it will come back to bite you, but you can win with less than average guards. Now, the Bills have bigger needs than guard. They need to upgrade the pass rush, right? Because now the question is, how does the Bills beat the Chiefs? We have seen the blueprint from 2 teams. We've seen it from the Raiders, and we've seen it from most recently the Bucks, right? So how do we beat the Chiefs? That's the question. The question is, we have to upgrade the secondary, and everyone is pushing back on me saying the secondary is an issue. It is an issue when you're playing the Chiefs. That's been my only point. The Bucks invested 7 picks in their DBs in the last 3 drafts, and they all made plays in that game. Now, if you're telling me, so to answer your question specifically, I think the Bills need to go either corner or edge rusher, because those 2 moves will get them closer to beating the Chiefs. If the Bills take a guard at 30, that doesn't get them any closer to beating the Chiefs. Are they going to commit more to running the ball? I mean, there's a stat in the same article that says the Bills ran the ball the second least in the league. The Chiefs were the only other team that ran it the least more than the Bills. So are you going to commit to running the ball more? So I think that pick is better spent on an edge rusher or a cornerback.
Right. And I think, right, that's a great question. Are they going to run the ball more? I don't think so. I think they want to run it more effectively. Like we've talked about. So this will be a good link to our second article we're going to talk about later. But what are your thoughts on the edge class? Because my understanding from what I've been seeing is that, there's no Myles Garrett per se, but people still seem to think it's a fairly strong class. What are your thoughts on the edge class?
There's definitely some guys in here that can help the Bills almost right away. A lot of the guys, that can be real impact guys are probably going to be gone by 30. That's the thing. You got Jason Owaye from Penn State. Nice, long, athletic DN. I think he needs to get bigger, because if you look at him on tape, on all 22 tape, he looks kind of small going up against these tackles. But what I liked about him is that he showed some semblance of some type of pass rush play. And you don't see that a lot in the college ranks from college defensive ends, showing their move set, their skill set, and that tells me with some type of coaching he could be a really good DN in this league. So I think the class overall at the top is very, it doesn't have a lot of difference makers, but there is some depth there where they could find somebody, maybe later in the draft that can also be an impact player. We don't know what we're going to get from AJ Epinesa. So, I mean, that's still out there, but you got a guy like Quincy Roche from Miami. You got somebody like Rousseau's going to be gone. You got somebody like Chris Rumph, who's going to be there late. I mean, these are guys, Jordan Smith is going to be there, Shaka Toney from Penn State also. Like, there's some guys that the Bills can get late that can make some type of contribution for them. But to answer your question, I think the DN class is pretty deep, but there's not a lot of difference makers at the throughout the whole draft.
All right, that's fair. There's now looking at the rest of this article in terms of the offense. He's got John Brown still on the roster, Dawson Knox at the tight end position, and he's got question marks at right tackle and right guard.
Yep.
Obviously, maybe the biggest question is whether or not they can. I'm assuming why would they not want Darrell Williams back? The question is whether or not they can afford to bring him back.
I think also in this article they talked about either signing him to a long-term deal before Ryan Ramczyk, I think it is, or Teron Armstead, one of those tackles from the Saints, before they sign their deal so they can get him cheaper. Or if worse comes to worse, use a franchise tag on him that would be worth $13 million. So if it was me, I would definitely get a deal done with him quickly. He had a great year, obviously. This is honestly has been a career year for Darrell Williams. He was, I think, where was he ranked? 8th. He was ranked a top 10 right tackle, out of 38 qualifying right tackles in PFF grade. And as I've said before on this podcast, I mean, how many teams can say that they have above average pass blocking at both right tackle and left tackle? And if you want to jeopardize that and go for a younger tackle in the draft, I'm not on board with that because, again, as I said again on this podcast, that there is not many right tackles coming out of the league, coming out of college like Tristan Wirfs. I mean, that's the only tackle I can think of in the last 10 years that's come out pro ready and won a Super Bowl not only in his first year. There are not a lot of these guys just running around here. So if you already have one, you got to lock him up. And the reason you have to lock him up because every move is Josh Allen centric. They all have to be Josh Allen centric. So this move would be Josh Allen centric. If it costs $13 million for 1 year, that doesn't, especially when we're under the cap, I would say just go ahead and sign him to a long-term deal instead of having to get that high franchise tag number.
Right, because you can do all the little tricks of the trade with the salary cap if you get him on a long-term deal. And yeah, and I think this is kind of the time of the year, and it certainly has been for me in the past, where it becomes, like it's the Madden effect, right? Like, oh man, well, I'm going to release this guy, and I'm going to sign this guy, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. But you don't want to create holes on your roster just to create a hole on your roster. Obviously there's certain cuts that probably should be made on the defensive line, but it still raises the question. You still have to get people in to replace them. Mm-hmm. So obviously the Bills have a plan. They're not going to tell us what it is, but I think fans sometimes get too caught up in, creating holes because they like filling holes. It's exciting to see your team fill holes. It's not exciting to see your team go into free agency and, sign Taiwan Jones. And that, that's just not exciting. So I think there's that. So let's assume they bring back Darrell Williams. He's got Cody Ford at left guard. I think Cody Ford will be the right guard, but I guess it doesn't matter. Who comes in? Is Bakker that other guard? It seems like Feliciano's not going to be back. Is that like a day 2 draft pick maybe that's at the other guard spot? Did they give Ryan Bates a try? What's your feeling on any of that?
As I was reading through this article, I got to potential targets at open spots. And Feliciano's spot was one of the ones that they said would be open. But if I'm being honest with everybody, I don't think John Feliciano played bad this year. He missed a couple games, and on top of that, he's a versatile piece. He could play center when you need him to. And with Mitch Morris's, concussion history and injury history, I would think he would be a good piece to keep around. He was very awful in pass protection, but we just highlighted how the Bills need to improve the run defense, and he was run offense, and he was one of the top run blocking guards in the league this year. So I know guys are saying that he's probably not going to be back, but I would hope that Brandon Beane would work something out with him to bring him back at a fair price, because for the most part, I think he played well. But if there was one guy in the draft that I would look at that could potentially replace John Feliciano, it would be this guy, Trey Smith from Tennessee. He's a guard, big, nasty guard. It's a wrecker in the run game, and he's pretty good at pass protection, working with the center and the guard. Especially one thing I like to look at with guards is how do they handle stunts, because that's a lot of the things that you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of stunts. You're going to see a lot of blitzes from linebackers, and he handled that pretty well at Tennessee. He had a really good game. The game I watched specifically was against Alabama, where he had a pretty good game against Christian Barrymore in that Alabama front. So that's a guy to look at it if the Bills want to go a different direction at guard.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about Trey Smith. Certainly, I've heard the name, along with Wyatt Davis was popular earlier in the year. He seems to have fallen a little bit. Who knows what the league really thinks about that stuff. So moving on to the other side of the ball on the defense, starting, I guess, with the defensive line, I'm a little surprised, and maybe not, I guess, because his contract is a little difficult to get rid of, but he's got Mario Addison in here, starting opposite Jerry Hughes, which is something that I don't know how many fans are going to be that thrilled about. And it seems like he says in here that, if Milano is going to get a, 4-year, 40 or 5-year, $50 million deal, that the Bills shouldn't do it. And I agree. And we've talked about that, about that quite a bit on this podcast already. So, but the Mario Addison thing to me is, I'm really torn about it, because if you look at his sack numbers, they're good. Not last year, but every other year. So was last year anomaly? What? And I guess it's up to the coaching staff and to figure that out. But I'm really torn about Mario Addison.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like out of all of those 1-year linemen that they signed, I think he played the best out of all of them, especially since he was such a versatile piece. He can play 3-tech or he can play defensive end. And there's not a lot of versatile pieces that's just sitting out there on the street. And since he did play the best, I'm looking here and he has a $10 million cap hit too. And that is the one reason why I'm like, man, he might have to be out if he's going to cost them $10 million. Because if I'm not mistaken, he's making more than Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes will have a $9.5 million cap hit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I am not willing to pay. If there's an edge rusher at 30 for the Bills to grab, they should grab him. I'm of the mindset they grab corner. I'm going to keep saying that. But, they can upgrade from Mario Addison. And that's why I think a lot of Bills fans, want him in. You said that they like to see, people replace players. But this player, Mario Addison, I feel is replaceable. So if the Bills can muster up enough cap money, they need to go out and get Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, I've been saying that for the past couple weeks now. That's a top flight pass rusher that you can, let's say you get him for 1 year, I would like him even for 1 year. And then maybe you sign him to a long-term extension. But, the Bills got a lot of cap situations to work out. You still got Josh Allen's contract coming up. And then you got Tremaine Edmonds' contract coming up too. So there's a lot of contracts that they have. And it's just like going back to Mario Addison, I would like to see us get younger and get cheaper at this edge position, since this edge class is deeper than it has been. So I think, like I said, I'm torn too, but I think I'm leaning more towards what Bills Mafia thinking, and I think we got to cut him and get younger and cheaper.
Yeah, I was just looking at his contract too, and I thought the dead cap would be higher. It's only a $4 million dead cap hit, and looking at some of the details, it says here that $2 million of his 2021 salary fully guarantees on the 5th day of the league year, which is like March 22nd this year or something, I think. And then you're looking at he's going to do a $800,000 roster bonus. So yeah, I mean, I think there is some incentive, and he's 34. So, I think he's 2 years older than Jerry Hughes, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah. I think there's certainly some incentive for them to, cut some money and reallocate it, not even to the defensive line. I think the most expensive defensive line in the league didn't work out. Yeah. So it's kind of time to allocate that in a different direction. I wouldn't be upset if they took a corner at 30. I mean, not at all. Or maybe even trade back, and maybe you can get, a corner and a guy like Hampson in the second round. We'll see. But I mean, I think the question is Brandon Beane going to do it? Like, Dave Gettleman, who he was under, I don't think it's ever traded back in his life. And Brandon Beane hasn't traded back yet, I don't think, with the Bills. So the question is would he do it? I think every fan, it seems, has recently sort of broached that subject of, let's trade down. We love draft picks. Get more draft picks.
Yeah, you got that. I mean, that's always the best move. Like, even if you got the number 1 pick, trading back is not ever a bad option. Thinking of the haul you could get for the first overall pick. And the Bills, how many picks they have? I think they have 7 draft picks. I mean, if the Bills could possibly get 12 draft picks out of this class, there's a lot of good solid players that they can get in late rounds. I would love to see that, because I have been pegged at saying that they need to get younger on defense, specifically the defensive line. I watched some film before I got on today, and I just really realized how many people they're swapping in and out on the defensive line. They don't have, to me, I feel Jerry Hughes is a stud, but they don't have one stud on the defensive line that's just a bona fide stud. So they need to nail that down and find a stud, but they need to again get younger at that on the defensive line. That's what their priority, needs to be. And if they could trade back, I would definitely love to see it. Like you said, historically, Brandon Beane has not traded back. He's traded up, actually. And I'm all for aggressiveness, but, at this point in time, my point is they need to trade back to get younger in the key areas on defense. So, again, our question should be, what is the move that's going to get us closer to beating the Chiefs? With retooling the defensive line, get us closer to beating the Chiefs? The answer to me is yes. With grabbing a corner somewhere in the second or third round, would that get us closer? A guy like Tay Gowan from UCF, would that bring us closer to beating the Chiefs? I say yes, it does. So those should be the questions on Brandon Beane's mind. But again, as I've heard many times before, these GMs know what to do, but are they going to do it is a different question.
Yeah, it can get really weird, I think. And I've always wondered, I feel like the scouting process is kind of like, the only way I know how to describe it is I feel like it's kind of pure, right? Like they go out, they collect the information, they find the players that the coach, the traits and the players that the coach wants. And then they more or less they hand that information off. I know Brandon Beane goes out. I know people see him out there all the time. And then I think it gets really muddied, like then you've got suddenly the GM and the assistant GM and the coach and the assistant coaches. And well, like people make fun of the Steelers because they'll only take big defensive backs, like no matter what, like they don't want to, so I think it can get muddied from that sense. And I think the Bills have a good scheme on defense. I don't know if it's going to take them up to that next level to beat the Chiefs without more athletes. Yep. And I know some people are sick of drafting defense and it should be Josh Allen centric, but you got to at least slow down Mahomes. And whether that's a change in scheme, a change in strategy, and or getting more athletes, I mean, you've got to do something because what you did this year didn't work against the Chiefs.
No, that I always ask the question. I say, what was the biggest takeaway from the Chiefs game? And the biggest takeaway for me from the Chiefs game is how badly the Bills struggled against those wide receivers and tight ends. Like that's the biggest, and the fact that they weren't balanced. That's another fact that I said that was going to come and bite them in the butt. But they need to get younger and more athletic at the cornerback positions. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are fine. They are two of the top 3 tandems, maybe, in NFL. They are solid. But cornerback 1 through 4, me personally feel like they all got question marks. Teams are not afraid of Trey White. Like it's not like they won't throw in his coverage. He's not like 2010 Richard Sherman or 2012 Richard Sherman. He's not like that because that's pretty much how he plays. I mean, he sits back there in zone and he makes plays off that zone. It's essentially what it is. He is not good when it comes to covering man on man, and that goes for all other Bills DBs too. They don't have any type of, I'm not going to say man coverage skills, but they struggle in man coverage. And I know primarily that's what the Bucks play. They play zone, but again, the Bills don't have the same athletic capabilities as the Bucks DBs. Again, as I said before, the Jason Light has invested in the DBs the last 3 drafts. So that has to be, the primary focus. And again, I know Bills Mafia hates to hear this, but they have to get more athletes on the field.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting. The one thing I noticed, and at first, when the game first happened, I thought that, I was like, man, Tampa played a lot of man. But then I realized that it was kind of like, the only thing I can figure out to call it is like a press zone, right? Where they kind of contact the receivers at the line, but then they're going back and they're playing a zone really similar to what the Bills played. So that's the difference, right? Why are you just letting like Tyreek Hill run off the line? And I know that if you miss, jamming him, that's a huge issue. Right. But I think you just got to take that chance. And if you're too scared to do that, to me, it's a sign exactly what you're saying. If you're too scared to miss a jam at the line, it means that you don't have the athletes to even. Now, I'm not saying you catch up to him just no problem like you're Deion Sanders, but you don't have the athletes to even come close.
Yeah.
So you have no choice. And to your point about Trey White, when you first said it, I was kind of like, man, can't believe you're saying that about Trey White. Like, where's my pitchfork?
Yeah.
But, the more I thought about it over the past couple of weeks, and it kind of dawned on me while you were talking, people don't throw at Trey White. And everyone assumes that when somebody doesn't get thrown at, it means they're exceptional. Well, Trey White isn't thrown at because the other guys are so much worse than him.
Yes.
So, like, of course you're going to throw it at Levi Wallace.
Right.
It's not that you're terrified of Trey White. It's that the guy opposite him is so bad, you may as well just throw at him. Like, and it's not that Trey White is bad. Let's be clear. He's not bad, but he's also not the greatest guy in the league either. But yeah, they're not throwing at Trey partially because they don't have to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've been saying this the more I say it, the more Bills Mafia people are starting to like think about what I'm saying and then go and research it and be like, maybe this is what he was talking about right here. I have never said he's a bad corner. My only point that I've ever tried to make him is because you like a player, that doesn't make them play any better, and that doesn't make them any better at their craft. And that's the case I always make with Milano. But back to Trey White, like you said, go watch the Seahawks game. Go watch how he played a man coverage in that game against DK. Go and watch the Denver game. He had a 92 grade that game, but that was because he was a beast in pass rush in that game, and he forced those fumbles. That's why he had a really good grade that game. But look at how often he's in zone. Look at how often teams throw at him. And then look when they ask him to cover man on man, how bad he struggles. Now, I will say this about Trey White. He had and I put this tweet out, he had the highest third quarter coverage grade of any cornerback in the league this year. It's very impressive. But when it's money time, what about the fourth quarter? What about the second quarter? What about the first quarter? So these are things I want Bills Mafia to go research for themselves. Go look at when Bills play top passing offense with top receivers, how he's doing, how he's looking. Because if you're calling yourself a top 5 corner, because that's what he was paid like, you should be able to play some type of man coverage. But ask yourself, how often is he playing man coverage? How often is he shadowing the number 1 receiver? I mean, these are just questions I want Bills Mafia to think about when they're talking about Trey White being a top corner.
Right. And to your point, we don't have the dates yet, obviously. But let's just take a look real quick at the schedule. Excuse me. We've got, obviously, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets. So you've got Tua, Zach Wilson, somebody.
You're sending him to the Jets, sending Zach Wilson to the Jets.
I mean, who knows?
It could be Darnold. Just the field. You never know,
right? It could be Darnold. It could be. And then you got the Falcons. So you got Matt Ryan and Julio Jones.
You got Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, both of them. Yeah,
right. The Panthers. I don't know what they're gonna do there. Houston. Indianapolis is maybe they're gonna have Darnold. Maybe they're gonna have Wentz. The Steelers.
Right.
But then you get the road games. These are the road games. Jacksonville. I mean, that's a Trevor Lawrence thing. Okay, no big deal. Then you've got the Saints, the Bucks, the Titans, and the Chiefs on the road. That's the schedule. Now, I think they can go 7-1 at home. I don't mean to make this a schedule prediction podcast, but tell me how many road games they're winning. 4? Hopefully.
That's a tough stretch.
Yeah, and I understand Drew Brees isn't there, but that's Michael Thomas, that's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and it's all the guys on Tampa. Good luck.
The whole receiving core, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you've got to get better in that area.
And I want to be clear, it's not a weakness. I don't think the Bills secondary is a weakness, but I want Bills Mafia to think about my thesis. My thesis is, what moves are going to help us be better against the Chiefs? The Bills were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. So that should be their mindset going into this draft, going into free agency. how are we going to be able to beat the Chiefs? Because the Bills obviously have enough to compete, to win their division, and to beat 2 playoff teams. Obviously, they have enough to do that. But they don't have enough to beat the top caliber teams. And so that's where we need to get into the upper echelon. That's where we need to get very nuanced. So the Bills DBs aren't they aren't a weakness to me, but they aren't a strength either. The way that Bills Mafia claims that they are a strength. Except for Poyer and Hyde, because they're a top safety tandem in the league. But the Bills defense went from 3rd highest graded the year before to 17th. Oh, yeah. Do you think Tremaine Edmonds should get an extension? That was one that was brought up in here, and I think it's a good talking point because I'm going to say this. They're going to be in a conundrum because of how young he is and how athletically gifted he is, that they almost may be forced to give him an extension because you can't have another team get that type of athleticism on their roster. Like let's just hypothetically say the Ravens get him. That would be another scary I mean, the Ravens already pump out defensive talent as it is, and then if they got somebody like Tremaine Edmonds, how much better the defense would be. But on the other side of that coin, has his play warranted him to get a new deal? I would say no. It's not. Now, everyone wants to make the excuse of, it's the scheme that's holding him back. If the Bills played a different scheme, he'd be so much better. Okay. Well, they're not going to switch. They're not going to switch schemes this next year because they got the same defensive coordinator. Okay. So we need to deal with the scheme that we currently have. Now, is there other ways that they can utilize him? Yes. He is not an on-ball linebacker. I mean, he does not thrive in that, but that's the role that he plays. But do you think that his play has warranted him to get a new deal, an extension? I mean,
I think this is what they're going to do. I think they're going to pick up his option because they have to do that in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think they have to make it by May, I think is the deadline. And what that does is that fully guarantees his 4th and 5th year contract. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, I don't think we've done a good job of doing what the Colts have done for Leonard. And I feel like Brandon Beane is going to put that on himself, and he's going to say, look, we need to redo this defensive line, make it better, and then we'll evaluate Tremaine once we can actually kind of keep these guys more occupied at the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I mean, I think you make good points that you kind of almost have to. He's not bad. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you brought somebody in that's more of a on-ball box linebacker, if you could give Edmonds some of the responsibilities that you have been giving to Milano.
Yep.
Because he's huge. I mean, his wingspan. And I'm not saying he's as good in coverage right now at Milano. I'd have to really watch that to I don't want to just blurt that out. But I just wonder with his size if that is something that they would consider.
I put something out on the PFF Bills page that if they have an opportunity to sign a guy, even at age 30, if they have an opportunity to sign a guy like Levante David, they should hop all over that. Because that is the ideal. That is the way that Tremaine Edmonds should play, the way Levante plays. Because Edmonds has all of the physical gifts to be a great linebacker, like Levante, like Devin White. But to see the thing that holds Edmonds back, and I know once one of these official guys who do tape breakdowns, they'll get a hold of this and be like, no, it's because of the scheme. But what I've noticed on film is that a lot of times he is slow reacting to plays. And there's the difference between Levante David and Tremaine Edmonds. Now, Tremaine's only been in the league, this is his 3rd year. Mm-hmm. So he's not seen a game like Levante. Levante has been a top linebacker literally since he stepped in the league. And so one of the things that separates Levante Davis, the Luke Kuechlys, is their processing speed at the linebacker position. That is so paramount to playing that position because it's a lot of dissecting, reading coverages, reading linemen, reading formations, getting people in the right spots. That is the area I see him struggle with a lot. When there is a gap open and he's slow to get to that gap. And that was in the Titans game. I was watching the Titans game. There's a gap open, you know, and he's supposed to flow to that gap, but, you know, he's off by a second, and now they got a 6-7 yard gain. Those are the type of plays that, you know, you're looking, you say, man, this guy's processing speed is just a tad bit slower. So if they ever got a chance to get a guy like Levante David, that's a dream scenario, obviously, because he's one of the best top 5 linebackers in this league. But if they were ever to get an opportunity to sign a guy like that, I think they should hop all over that, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I've noticed the same thing maybe just once or twice. It's not even almost every game. It's like every other game. You're just like, man, he was looked like he was late there, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that causes him to take a bad angle, or like you said, not fill the gap. You know, I'm like, oh man, that's too bad, you know. And yeah, I mean, he is young, but I think after this year, you know, I mean, that can't really be an excuse, because after this coming year, if he stays healthy, he would have played 64, 70 games if you include playoff games, you know, and at that point, you know, at some point the guy just is what he is. Yep. You know, wherever wherever that line is drawn, the player becomes what they are.
This is the last one, and then we'll move to the Jerry Hughes, because that's a hot article right now. Okay, so the last one, we can't leave the Bills' outlook without talking about the most important player on his team, and that's Josh Allen, Buffalo's native son.
Who?
Not really, but he is. But there's a section here that says, was Josh Allen's 2019-2020, was it a fluke? Basically is what the caption is saying. And I want to know your thoughts. Like, do you think he will be able to sustain this level of play? Because this is a fact. This is not conjecture. He had the greatest third-year jump in league history for any quarterback. So that is a fact. Do you think he will be able to sustain this level of play, you know, for 10 plus years to come?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I wonder, will it always look the same? If he doesn't get better, okay, and if he doesn't sort of correct the things we've talked about, like the checkdowns, and yeah, I think it's sustainable, because I think he has shown, I feel like, the ability to diagnose, to be able to change a play. You know, certainly his accuracy to all levels of the field has increased. So, sure, you know, but I guess, what does that look like, right? There's always new quarterbacks coming into the league. You feel like they're trying, like, I almost feel like, okay, Adam Gase doesn't have a job, so that's going to elevate the coaching in the league, you know. So, like, at some point, does the league keeps taking steps, right? Like, Pat Mahomes came in and kind of elevated the bar of what a quarterback in the league looks like. And Josh Josh was there with him this year, you know, and people want to compare it to, I don't know why people compare it to Carson Wentz. Like, Carson Wentz is so weird to me. Like, he broke his back and he, like, missed the playoffs, and they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, and people are like, Carson Wentz broke his back. He didn't have anything to do with that. Like, get out of here with that crap. You know, people want to say it's like Blake Bortles. Like, you can look at Blake Bortles and all the yardage he got when they signed him this ridiculous contract. He got it in garbage time anyway, and they either knew it and didn't care, or they were scared, or whatever. And I think the organization is smart enough to know that, as you look at this roster, I mean, Josh kind of did a Tom Brady, I think. I think he covered up, him and Diggs covered up for a lot of stuff that wasn't great. You know, and I'm not saying the Bills roster is trash by any means, but I think Josh is like the ultimate, I'm going to cover up our deficiencies guy. That's kind of what he's becoming.
I'm a push back just a little bit.
That's fine.
I don't think that he is quite at the Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to elevate the whole wide receiving core type thing, because let's hypothetically say if Stephon Diggs, if they didn't sign Stephon Diggs, right, and they just had John Brown, Cole Beasley, and let's say Gabe Davis, do you think they had the same type of success? I don't think so. You know, I think Diggs definitely. Go ahead.
I was thinking about that, and I think like there was a danger to getting Diggs. You know, like what happened to Baker when OBJ got hurt? Right? Like why? Like kind of like why did they like why did you trade Hopkins? Like in a way, like I feel like having someone really really good like Diggs, like Josh is like I'm just gonna throw to you, and I feel like not having Diggs. Now, I don't know. Do they win 13 games? I'm not sure, but I feel like sometimes getting that guy, like the Michael Thomas guy, is a handicap at times because like the quarterback inherently is like, I got to throw it to this guy. This guy's good. Instead of just throwing it to whoever's open.
Right.
And I feel like Josh got that tunnel vision a lot.
Yeah. I mean, Diggs had the most targets and the most catches. That rarely happens. And the most yards.
Yeah.
So that is, like you said, that is most certainly screaming tunnel vision to me. He will not do that next year. I promise you that. And that's not because he's not that good. It's because teams won't let him do that. And then is to go back to your point about not having a number one receiver. That's definitely a statistical and an analytical thing too. The year after Megatron left, Matthew Stafford had a career year. D-Hop left Houston, and Deshaun Watson had a career year. There's an article that was just put out 2 days ago that they talked about on Undisputed that you can make a case that Deshaun Watson had the greatest season in NFL history. Now, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but you know, this article was laying out points as to why Deshaun Watson had the greatest season ever for a quarterback. Yeah. And so going back to Josh, it's just like that number one receiver helps. And to his credit, he got it done even in 19 without a Stephon Diggs. I mean, they played really well last year, but Stephon Diggs took that offense to another level. But now next year comes, right? And so they're not going to let Josh just lock in on the Diggs. Diggs is probably going to be double covered all year next year. And he's probably going to have less. He's probably going to have half of what he had this year. So what is Josh going to do then? What is Josh going to do when he gets in trouble? And now he's relying on his decision-making. I've talked about that. See, now that goes back to my previous point in this podcast where I talk about his decision-making, how important that's going to be going forward to just stay true to the system and not force-feed it to a guy. You know, and that's the question I have. But what gives me optimism is the fact that he had improved in his accuracy, and not just any accuracy, it's his clean pocket accuracy. Josh could not hit water in a lake from a clean pocket when he first came into the league. And that's just a fact. He was second to last in his rookie year. That's a fact. Yeah. So, I mean, I want to see the fact that he took a jump in clean pocket accuracy that's a stable metric. And I talk about stable metrics all the time. So basically that's something that you can predict. It'll be consistent from year to year. So since he took that leap, I have optimism that he will still go forward, but my decision-making with him, that is my issue with, not my issue, but that's my concern with him. Is it when Diggs is taken away, who else is he going to find when he play the better teams and they got a pass rush and they can get to him and he forces to make off-platform and off-script throws? Who is going to be, can he rely on all his weapons or is he just going to rely on Diggs? That's my only concern with Josh going forward.
Yeah, and that's a nice way kind of to tie it back to what we talked about in the beginning, the running back. You know, I think getting Josh secondary receivers that he trusts is extremely important because I think if he suddenly he won't say this, but if he doesn't have like the Devin Singletary drop, like he didn't have confidence, like that just gave him no confidence in like checking the ball down ever again in that game almost. So you've got to have guys who, and to his credit, the one thing I will say is he keeps throwing to Dawson Knox, which I think is great because Knox needs time to develop. But Josh is a guy, and maybe every quarterback's this way. I mean, he really, it seems to me, needs to know he can trust his guys. So if we go into next year and guys start dropping passes early in the year, I feel like he's going to go back to sort of that. He has the potential to go back to that. Where's Diggs thing. So, you know, I guess the solution to that is to get the best secondary receiving options that and that you can get for him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think once Josh gets more, I mean, he's already comfortable, but when he gets in trouble, see, that's the thing. That's where Josh play starts going into the crapper when he gets pressure. I mean, he was way better against the blitz this year. No question about it. That's why he had the season that he had. But it's when they play those better teams and he gets, pressured, or he has to make off platform and off script throws. Can he find someone other than Diggs to bail him out? I think they have the personnel to do it, and I think they're going to add someone else in the draft. Like you said, he's starting to grow a nice rapport with Dawson Knox, so I think that would definitely help. So that's what I want to see from Josh. Can he do that, on a consistent basis against the better teams in the league?
Yeah. So we'll see. Let's get into this other article.
Yes.
So I can start yelling.
Yeah, so before he gets into this article, because Charlie has strong opinions about it. So first, I wanted to let everyone know that you can find this article on the coldfrontreport.com. And the title of the article is now the time for Buffalo to part ways with Jerry Hughes? That is the title of the article. This is written by my guy, Greg Bauscher of Cold Front Report. His Twitter handle is @SportsBully1. So I'm pretty sure he would love to hear how you feel about this article. So, Charlie, you didn't let the cat out the bag. So I want you to let everyone know, how do you feel about this article after reading it in its entirety? What did you think of the content in the article?
Well, after I read it the first time, I was prepared to come on here and say that I disagreed with literally every word of the article. However, I've got to say that I don't really disagree with any of the first paragraph. In fact, I agree a lot with the first paragraph, and this is something that I've said. I think that when Hughes first got here, it was one of the top 3 defensive lines in the franchise history. Mm-hmm. You had Hughes and Mario Williams and, Marcel Darius and Kyle Williams. So of course he's going to have a lot of success with sacks with those guys on the team. And then they all left. Mm-hmm. And now he's just kind of by himself. So, yeah.
Got Trent Murphy. Stop. He got Trent Murphy.
So, okay, the second paragraph, I'm okay. He's talking about Lorenzo, like, whatever. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in here that is just kind of like, I don't want to say it's some stuff's being ignored, but
well,
I think
let us know.
His salary is like $10.7 million, right? Like that's kind of the number that's in here. Okay. I mean, we're talking about like Shaq Barrett, who might get 25 a year. Sheesh. And you've got a problem with the best pass rusher on the team is making 10. And that's a problem? Like, I don't know.
I had the same discussion with him. We talked about this. Now, I didn't do any research, so that's why he kind of got me. But I told him I was going to go back, watch, and then I'm going to come back with something definitive. So this is what I came back with. So their biggest issue with this, so first of all, he used my tweet on the PFF Bills page. This is what kind of sparked this whole thing. It's in this article also. I put up Jerry Hughes finished with the 5th highest pass rush grade at 86.0 among all edge defenders, right? And so he was like, but Jerry Hughes only has 4.5 sacks. Like, where's the production? And so their biggest issue, or his biggest issue, is it's like the best pass rusher, like you said, the best pass rusher on the team is making $10.5 million. They feel that number is too high. He would be cool with the production if it wasn't at $10.5 million. But to your point, as you just said, Shaq Barrett is getting ready to make, or could be projected to make, almost 25 a year. And you have an issue with Jerry Hughes, who had top 5 pressures in the league. You have an issue with him making 10.5 million because he had 4.5 sacks. So It's just like, I tried to say, I'm the PFF guy, whatever. Sacks aren't everything. It's about pressures. It's about hurries. It's about how many times he moves the quarterback off the launch point. And they don't want to hear that, because then we get into this nuanced conversation of, well, what's a hurry, or what does PFF count as a pressure? Is this really a pressure? Like, beating your man off a block really doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, it kind of does matter. Like, he's actually winning. He doesn't give much in the run game. I'll agree with that. But there's a lot of times on film that I see that he makes good plays, but I'm interested to hear what else you have to say about what you saw in this article.
Yeah, I think, and this is a direct quote, I'm going to read this part right here. Many of his defenders will overlook his sack totals as an insignificant gauge of success, as they point to the advanced analytics, which say Hughes was one of the most proficient pass rushers in the NFL, ranking second overall in pass rush win rate, winning 28% of his rushes on the year. Then he goes on to reference TJ Watt, who won 33% of his rushes and had 15.5 sacks and 23 tackles for loss. Okay. I mean, so basically what you're saying is why doesn't he have more sacks with a similar win rate? I don't know. Like, go watch the game again. What are you trying to tell me, that like you think that like Jerry Hughes beats his block, gets into the backfield, gets to the quarterback, and falls down? Or hands the guy a cheeseburger? Like, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have sacks because the guy gets rid of the ball. Or somebody else comes over and blocks him. I don't know. Like, I didn't rewatch every game. So go watch TJ Watt, watch his sacks, and then go watch fucking Jerry Hughes and watch his pressures, and then tell me why. I don't know. Maybe you should have done that. Like, what are you even talking about? Jesus. 4 tackles lost on the year. I don't know. Go watch the game. Maybe they ran away from his side of the field. Like, I don't know. Like, I'll go watch it, I guess, and I'll tweet at you, and you can get mad at me on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. But this is why we do this, though. We read these articles. We watch the film to see if this stuff adds up, to see if the stuff of what we're seeing on tape, what we're writing, make sure this stuff adds up. And this is why we do this. And this is why I wanted to have someone else see this article to see what they thought. Because to your point, Charlie, and I went back and I watched some tape. So I'll tell everyone to go and watch the Titans game. So in that game, the Bills lost, obviously, and they did not have Trey White that game. They had a lot of injuries that game. So I watched Jerry Hughes. I watched most of his pass rush reps, right? So he had an 85.6 PFF grade, defensive grade, and he had an 80-plus PFF pass rush grade, right? So he had 7 hurries in that game. And so people don't like for me to say, oh, well, what is a hurry? Is it when the quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket or blah, 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 blah. Try to get really nuanced with me to tell me what a hurry is. And that's why people hate PFF, because it's like, who are they to dictate what this is and what that isn't? That's why people hate them. So my point is he had 7 hurries in that game, right? And there was many times that he would win his rep. And like you said, Tannehill would just get the ball out quick. Like, if he had one more second, he would have had a sack. But my point is he's winning his reps. So if he's winning his reps and he's moving quarterbacks off their launch point, I think that's very valuable. Like, there's many times on tape where you see him winning his block, winning his beating his man, getting to the quarterback, but the quarterback just get it off so quickly. You know what I mean? You can't do that. Is how you defend a great pass rusher. You get the ball out quick. Brady did it to Joey Bosa, and there's a soundbite of Joey Bosa saying, hey, stop getting out the ball so quick. That's how you neutralize a good pass rusher. So the sack numbers aren't there, and people have the same gripe with Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham is almost tops in the league in pressures every year for PFF, but it doesn't equate to a lot of sacks. But, the one time Brandon Graham gets a pressure, right, since he has such a high pressure rate, you get a play like they had in the Super Bowl when he causes a sack fumble on Brady for the game. You know what I mean? So my point is, you can't find consistent pressure everywhere, and I think this article is just focusing on sacks and not the whole totality of the pass rush wins and how it affects the quarterback and things of that nature.
Right. And I understand people's problem with PFF. I mean, I've read all the articles where PFF explains their grading and I've read every single thing I can find. And analytics are subjective. Like, it's numbers, but a human being still invented them. So sure, Pro Football Focus has to make some determination on what they can consider a hurry. Somebody, I don't know who, at Pro Football Reference has to make a determination on what they deem a catchable football. I don't know. Yeah, okay, it's a little subjective, and I understand. If I'm, like I said, I've read a whole bunch, so I think I'm speaking correctly. Like, PFF gives credit, like, how fast do you win your matchup? Like, like did the quarterback run into you? Then you don't really get credit for the sack. Like, like, just first of all, do a little research, and I know that PFF is big on like our metrics are very predictive, and I agree. Like, they're very predictive on what you're measuring. Like, that's anything, you know what I mean? Like, so like I get like what they're saying, but there's exceptions. We're not going to there's exceptions with PFF, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, the point is like I feel like I take PFF grades and measurements, and I apply them in the context that I think that they should be applied in. I don't think they're these huge transcendental things all the time. But, like, you want to cut Jerry Hughes. He's the best guy on the team. Like, if you cut Jerry Hughes, and now you're telling you want to cut Quentin Jefferson, you want to cut Vernon Butler, you want to cut Mario Addison. So who's your defensive line? Ed, Starr, Epinesa, and Daryl Johnson? Like, who the hell is going to be on your defensive line?
And Horrible Harry. Don't forget about Harrison Phillips.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are you talking about? I just don't get, like, if you don't believe in analytics, okay, you don't believe in analytics, but you're wrong. Like, the NFL's been using analytics, like, longer than you think they've been using it. Like, they have been, and not like in the way that maybe they do now, but like they still use them. So I just don't know, like, who are you going to replace them with? And that's, of course, that's not covered in the article, because this is just about, you know, Jerry Hughes.
It might be covered down at the bottom. This draft is crammed with top line edge.
Oh yeah, that's a. Oh, is it?
Contribute.
Really?
Perceivably come in. I think he's advocating for a younger pass rusher. Right.
Like, okay. But then I get told all the time that draft picks aren't a sure thing and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. That's why I asked you earlier about your take on the edge class, because I knew this was at the bottom of the article.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So you want to cut Jerry Hughes and you want to draft some guy at number 30 who we have no clue at all if he's ever going to be good. Dan Hatman once said to me, he said, "What's the job of a scout?" And I'm like, "Well, Dan, it's to evaluate players." He said, "Yeah, but we're trying every year to predict the future of 300 human beings." Sounds kind of difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you cut the best pass rusher on your team for a thing that isn't a sure thing? This is, to me, this article is like, well, I don't believe in analytics. I only like sacks, so I don't like Jerry Hughes because he doesn't get sacks. Okay, I mean, that's your opinion. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just completely disagree with it 100%.
I after doing research, like I said, because I had to go back and watch the film, watch the tape, see where his highest graded games were, see where his lowest graded games were, see where he's winning and losing. You know, I can't say there was a lot of reps that I saw Jerry Hughes lose. You know, he that Titans game again. I'll bring up that game. He played Taylor Lewan pretty well, man. I mean, Taylor Lewan's one of the best left tackles in the league. You know, and like you said, the PFF grade brings in how quickly you win your rush too. He beat Taylor Lewan a couple times, man. I mean, this guy's still a solid pass rusher. But I want to say, though, I do understand his point. And for me, it's like I work for PFF, but I try to understand where they come from with the grades, and I try to marry the grades and the tape together. And so
Right.
sometimes the grade and the tape don't always match. But I would say in this isolated event here, I would say the grade and the tape, they add up, man. I mean, I know I'm gonna get a lot of pushback when Greg hears this, and I'm good. I'm all for it. I'm all for defending my position. That's what I do, But I would say the grade and the tape, it matches up. Now, they said he did have a couple of dud games. But he had some good games sprinkled in. He's been consistently grading at a 70 pretty much this whole season, and then the playoff run against the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken, he had 2 sacks. And in the Chiefs game, he also had a sack. So his last 3 or 4 games were really good also. So we also have to take that into account too. But, their issue is, why are we paying $10.5 million for a 33-year-old edge rusher when he's only giving us playoff production? And I'm just like, it's not just playoff production, though. You don't get that many pressures with playoff production. But again, it goes back to your point, Charlie, about how much you value analytics, and it's just like those pressures matter, or does just sacks matter to you? And I think you got to take the pressures into consideration, man.
Yeah, like Sean McDermott isn't sitting there going, man, this Jerry Hughes guy, 4.5 sacks, worthless. Well, I mean, he's looking at pressures, quarterback hits. And, I get it. I'm not saying, Jerry Hughes is like Bruce Smith. Don't get me wrong. But my point is you're advocating for cutting basically all the defensive ends on the team. And then you're going to go in with Epinesa, Star Ed, and, I don't know, Jason Owe. Okay. Or what do you think they're going to sign Ngakoue somehow or something? You don't even know how good he's going to be in the system. So you're telling me that you went 13-3 last year, and you're trying to beat the Packers, the Bucks, and the Chiefs mainly. And you're going to take away probably the best. Well, you don't think he is, obviously, Greg. But like everyone else who thinks they're the best defensive player on the team, the best offensive lineman, you're going to just take that away for an unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, what? We're like a fringe Super Bowl team.
Yeah. The Bills are a couple pieces away, right? And to sum it all up, I don't think getting rid of Jerry Hughes will bring him closer to winning the Super Bowl. That's honestly my opinion. At 33, he still can effectively rush the passer by all advanced analytics, whether you value them or not. The analytics, and for me, the eye test say he can still rush the passer at a high level, top 5 pass rush grade. So I don't think I don't think Brandon Beane making this move will put the Bills closer to being the Chiefs.
No. And my main point is, it seems, I'll say it again, it seems like you're blaming Jerry Hughes. If you watch the tape, you see Jerry Hughes winning. Mm-hmm. But it seems like you see that and then feel like he just stops and is like, hey, Pat, how's it going? Yeah, Tyreek's pretty good. Are you going to throw him the ball? He's trying to, they throw the ball. They're like, oh shit, here comes Jerry Hughes. I got to get rid of the ball. I mean, I don't know. It's not like he beats his guy and then he just stops running. I don't know. I don't know what else you want him to do. if the ball's not there, he can't hit the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, Jerry Hughes still he's not that 10.5 sack guy. I don't think he's gonna be that. But again, as I said before previously, there's a lot of instances on tape where he's winning his rep and the ball is he's just a second late. Now, maybe we can make an argument if he was younger, he would make up that second that the ball is out. He would get there. So I can see Greg's point in that. So if he was younger or he had a younger guy, maybe that second that he would missed, from getting the sack. Maybe if we had a younger guy, that second will be taken advantage of, right?
Yeah. Doesn't somebody measure that? Like, doesn't Next Gen Stats measure that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that it's measured. Somebody measures that.
So, to his point, I mean, there's some veracity there, but in a totality of it, I cannot sit here and justify, cutting a guy that was, top 5 in pressures this year. Because at some point, like you saw, like my point earlier about Brandon Graham, at some point, those pressure is going to equate to a sack, right? So in the playoffs, he had 2 sacks against the Ravens, and then he had another sack against the Chiefs. So, right. I mean, he's consistently getting pressure, and eventually at an opportune time, they're going to eventually come in sacks if you keep getting consistent pressure. So that's my take on it. I thought, reading it was a nice position piece, and it's for platforms like this for us to go back and discuss, should you keep him, should you not, and it's going to force Bills Mafia to say, hey, let me go back and watch the tape. And again, I urge every Bills Mafia member to go back and watch A22 tape. Please do not go back and watch the broadcast because you can't see everything that's going on. Go back and watch the A22 film. If you're a diehard fan, someone who's a diehard fan, ask them for their NFL Game Pass. Use their NFL Game Pass and watch the coach's film. See what your favorite players are doing when you can't see everything on broadcast. I urge you, I implore you to please do that.
Right. And you may not be able to, watch it the same way Brandon Beane would watch it, right? Like you may not be able to rattle off and talk to me about Jerry Hughes' bend around the edge, but you'll be able to see very clearly whether or not he's winning his matchup, stuff like that. And I'm all for getting younger. I'm not saying I'm not for getting younger, but I mean, I don't want a younger unknown necessarily. We already have one of those in AJ Epinesa. So, I just don't see how it benefits at this point. I mean, that's kind of like my point is I'm sort of, I guess maybe I'm kind of the person who if you've got an idea of how this can get better or if you don't think this person's good enough, okay, well, what's your plan to like replace it, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's easy just to say, oh, well, I think they should cut so-and-so. I mean, I don't know. And I haven't always been like the biggest Jerry Hughes supporter. Don't get me wrong. Like I think his personal fouls are ridiculous. And there was a time 2 or 3 years ago where I was like, man, this guy, we got to get him out of here. Mm-hmm. This guy doesn't do a thing. And then you know what happened? I started following Eric Turner's Twitter account. Mm-hmm. And then I started seeing his breakdowns, even if they're 10, 15-second clips of all 22 tape. And I was like, oh, yeah, hey, look at that. Jerry Hughes is like kind of like winning his thing. It's just that they're getting the ball out before he gets there. That's not his fault. Now, defense is symbiotic a little bit, right? Like maybe with better coverage, the quarterback's going to hold the ball more. And then when Jerry Hughes does get there, there's sacks there. I mean, I think somebody mentioned this the other day too. Is there were times where Jerry forced the guy out, right? Forced him. I think a lot of this year Jerry played on the left side instead of the right side. He forces him out, and Mario Addison is over there not really doing his thing. So if Jerry forces him one way, and then Mario Addison's coming the other way, he's going to force him maybe back into Jerry Hughes or back into Ed Oliver. And that didn't happen. There's a relationship there. Like Bruce Smith, great player, but I think you're underscoring maybe how important guys like Bennett and Talley and Phil Hansen were to Bruce to at least force him sometimes back towards Bruce. I think there's an element of that we tend to forget. That he's not the only player out there on the defense,
right? And one thing we need to keep in remembrance is like Bills Mafia has said it before. Who else on his defensive line was winning like that? Like, who else on this defensive line was that Kyle Williams, or was that who's the other defensive tackle? Marcel Darius.
Darius. I mean, come on, like that's a lot of talent.
Exactly. Like, who else is helping Jerry Hughes out? A lot of the pass rushing was on him this year, and like I said, Addison had a solid year, but I mean, we need more. He's 34, played for Carolina, so he had his Carolina connection. So, Bean's gonna sign you if you play for Carolina when he was there. So,
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Get
I'm
the
sorry.
Quan Short connection going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would not be mad if they sign. Yeah, I would not be mad if they sign Quan Short. But me personally, I'm kind of sick of the Carolina experiment. They need to be done with that. But I kind of feel like Buffalo. Like, if Buffalo doesn't get J.J. Watt, Quan Short's probably gonna be their next call.
Yeah, I wonder how much he has left. It seems like all those guys that are coming from there have suffered injuries in the past couple of years. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of all I had to say about that article. And my Twitter is at Charlie_Gross_. If you need to talk to me about it, that's fine.
Yeah, make sure you add him in the clip. So
I'll tag him in the description so he can get mad.
He's a Bills fan too. I mean, if ever we could set something up where he comes on here, I talk to him, man, and be like, hey, got some strong opinions about your article, man. But
I want to say that I did not invite Greg onto the show because I did not know the article existed until about an hour before we're recording this.
And that was great. That's why it was great.
So
that was real instant reactions. That's what I like. That's how you feel about an article. Say that's how you feel about an article. It was whack. And whack in the perspective of the content in the position, not like the wording and stuff like that, not the format. Just saying like the position he didn't feel. That's all, and that's cool. That's why that's why we do this. Give our opinions. Say if we hate it or love it. That's why we do it, and that's what I love doing. I love it.
So, is there anything else we need to talk about, or do you want to wrap this one up for today?
Yeah, I think we covered that. After that fiery explanation, I think you said it all, man.
All right. Well, tell the people where they can find you on the internet.
Yes, sir. So you can find me again on Twitter. That's where I'm mainly at. That's where I interact with everyone, all fans, haters, trollers, everybody. At eDaniel77. That is my Twitter. That's my personal Twitter handle. I work for PFF, and I run the PFF Bills page. So if you are a diehard Bills fan, please go follow that. PFF_Bills. I would love to have your follow, so you can follow all PFF statistics and Josh Allen love now. Remember, everyone said we hated Josh Allen, which was never the case, but that's another topic for another day.
Oh man.
But yes, please go follow PFF_Bills. And again, my personal account at eDaniels77.
Alrighty. You can, like I said, you can find me on Twitter at Charlie_Gross_. You can find this podcast account at Bills Brawl. We are a part of the Brawl Network. I encourage you to check out the other shows we have going on. We have my man Mike Lindsley with the Tuesday show. He had Ryan Talbot and Corbin Bryant on this week. He had Howard Simon on last week. I encourage you to check those out. Also, I will be doing a new Friday show called The Podcaster's Corner, where we're just going to talk some Bills, talk some podcasting, some tips for people. Please like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends about it. If you hate this podcast, then I really strongly encourage you to tell your enemies about it. That would be fine too. Thank you guys for listening so much. It would mean so much to us if you could spread the word about the Bills Brawl and the Brawl Network. Just an excellent place to get sports content. And, of course, Bills Mafia, I cannot leave you without saying, find a way to embrace your growth mindset. And, as always, trust the process.
You know I'm repping for my team. I got that salad on my team. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, I'm with the Buffalo Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. Hey.